Alright guys, the time is now for a showdown between the Beastmen, who are going to be led by Malagor the Dark Turkey, and the Greenskins, who are going to be led by a Night Goblin Warboss. I'm sorry guys, that one was terrible. But anyways, without further ado, let's jump right into this match and have some fun. So as far as our army goes, it's definitely very forward thinking, or I should say forward deployed. We do have two groups of Centaurs and just the shielded variant. It's just much better against the Greenskin. So number one, the shielded variant does have better combat stats, 29 and 26. I think the great weapons are like 24 and 20. It's substantially lower. You're basically trading those combat stats for armor piercing. And on top of that, these guys do also have shields, and the Greenskins have a ton of missile skirmishers. They have Morgub's Ancient Marauders, they have Death's Creepers. You're going to be seeing hordes of Goblin Archers as well, typically, with the Rusty Airs at the very least. So having the shields on the Centaurs is very, very good in this matchup. So we do have two of those bad boys, one here and one on the far side. I think we have one like deployed up in the hill somewhere. I know there's two pairs of those. Each of them is going to be teamed up with a group of Chaos Poison Warhounds. Yeah, here they are right here. They're really good for skirmishing, pretty much a must in my opinion, because if you don't, the Greenskins just get full map control and it's really easy for them to impose their will. On top of that, we do have a couple of the throwing axes. So here in the center, just in case we get a surprise Arachnarok Queen or Giants or anything like that, which people sometimes do whip out. You can see there actually is a Giant here. So yeah, throwing axes are pretty much a must. On top of that, two Harpies. Harpies are also solid. For 600 gold, you get a mobile unit that's very good at hunting goblins, enemy skirmishers, rear charging lower tier Greenskin infantry. Aside from Black Orcs, like they can do a lot of damage to lower tier Greenskins. The weakness, of course, being their low melee attack, but Greenskins typically have terrible melee defense, like 16 on Savage Orcs and Goblins, I think. 26. So, I mean, you can get some pretty good value with those Harpies. On top of that, we do have the Butchers of Kalkengard. So these are Minotaurs with shields, the Regiment of Renown. Really good. 60 melee defense, very fast with 56 speed, solid melee attack, they regenerate. Now, the Greenskins do have really good answers against the Butchers, but if you're playing kind of a spatial battle like this, so I'm going to be harassing, and whenever I can isolate or pull apart any of his troops, I'm going to be sending the Minotaurs after those guys to kind of beat them down and do their job in that respect. You don't want to take a head-on engagement with the Greenskins, in my opinion. I mean, my infantry force is literally like 3 gore herds in these Minotaurs, which I guess isn't terrible, but you just want to try and pick your opponent apart with the Centaurs, your throwing axes, and whatever tools, other tools you bring to the table. So, Minotaurs, we also have Malagor the Dark Omen. So I've really been enjoying him quite a bit. A lot more interactive than Morker, who you just kind of mouth breathe and send into the front line. And he brings a lot to the table. Traderkin, very good against single targets. It slows, good against Greenskin Lords. Devolve, also good against blobs of infantry, which the Greenskins typically bring. So I definitely think Malagor is a pretty solid pick. We got some spears in the back, who I think I forgot to deploy. We got Ungor Spearman herds. And then we also have a Cygor. So the Cygor is going to be keeping my opponent honest. He has to advance. He can't really, sit back and skirmish with me. He's going to be taking damage if he doesn't. It looks like there's going to be a fat, chubby boulder coming right into this blob of Goblin Archers right here. Now it looks like it's a bit of a miss. For my opponent's army, super wide Greenskin force, definitely going to be very tough to handle. Goblins and Savage Orcs in the front line. It's got a Giant Skulkers, massive Goblin firing line. So the Rusty Airs and I think 4 Goblin Archers in total. A couple groups of the Forest Goblin Spider Riders, one here and one on the far side. 3 in total. The 2 on the wings do have gold chevrons. So they're basically designed to fight Centaurs, which I think is a really cool innovation for my opponent. Night Goblin Shaman with Itchy Nuisance, Sneaky Stabbin', and a Night Goblin Warboss with the Tormentor Sword and Maw, of course. So guys, let's get this show on the road. So anyways, I'm going to be pushing forward my Centaurs, doing a bit of harass, but then the Goblins pop out, and I'm like, oh, I better run. So I'm just kind of feeling my opponent out here. I do get a free charge up in the hills, just using the Centaurs where I can, mulching on some Goblins, and I do the same thing on the far side. So we get about 100 gold on each of those respective fights, but my opponent countercharges with the Forest Goblin Spider Riders on both fronts. So I'm going to try and pull the Spider Riders away from the main formation, try and get my my bang for my buck that way. So the Cygors are going after the Goblin Archers right now. Having such a wide army, there's no Black Orcs, there's no like super valuable targets here. So we do hit the Goblin Archers here with a couple direct hits. We're going to be shooting at the Rusty Airs now, trying to do our thing. So we do have a fight up on the high ground. The Forest Goblin Spider Riders hot in pursuit. Savage Orcs are helping out as well, so I'm giving some Overwatch fire, but here's where the Minotaurs are solid, right? I'm able to pull my opponent's forces apart. You can see he's allocated some of his resources here. He has some up in the hills here. And this is where the Minotaurs are really going to shine. So now the Savage Orcs are just getting ready to just get buttered right now. The Minotaurs are going to come in and tear them to shreds. And the dual wielding Gore Herds actually hit really, really hard. And against Savage Orcs, they're going to be able to do a ton of damage on the charge. So Savage Orcs just get shreked really bad. They're terrified. They're getting run down by the Butchers, who actually do cause terror. That's something that's very cool about those guys, as opposed to regular Minotaurs. We're able to kind of pull him out and overwhelm his forces up here on the high ground. But in the meantime, he does have Forest Goblin Spider Riders trying to get back here to my Cygor, but I do have some defending units. And unfortunately, the Warp Turkey does get caught a little bit. He's going to be having to run from these Savage Orc Biggins, but thankfully I just have this roving herd, which is just causing a ton of problems. So the wall has gone down, the Minotaurs are just going to be leaping into them. Now, normally, Savage Orc Biggins are a hard counter against Minotaurs with their anti-large and their really good combat stats, but just the sheer numbers, throwing axes coming in, and I believe I was actually going to rear charge them, we're actually able to terrify them. So that's why the Butchers of Kalkengard are so insane. The terror is so damn good against the Greenskins. Up here in the hills, you can see the Centaurs, unfortunately, are getting pulled in by his gold chevron Spider Riders and Goblins. I can't really get away. He's going to win that fight pretty hands down. He's also reorganizing some of his forces here, so the Forest Goblin Spider Riders and the Morgoth Mansion Marauders are going to be kind of backing up all these troops. The Giant hasn't really been able to find a home, and these Harpies, I'm just sitting and waiting. If he shoots at me, that's fine. I'm just going to run back and forth and waste his ammo and his time. In the meantime, that allows me to secure my high ground position. So bounce of power, a little bit in my favor here. You can see on the low ground, the Rusty Arrows are coming up the hill. Unfortunately, I think they overextend a little bit and advance without the rest of their forces. But I get a pretty good charge with the Centaurs here, definitely going to feast on those guys. But he is picking off some Harpies in the back. The Goblin Shaman is lurking as well, and the Night Goblin Warboss is just playing really defensively, trying to use his missiles. But a lot of them are getting caught out by Gore Herds and other things like that. In the back, the Cygor is quite happy. You can see the shattered Savage Orc Biggins are going to be running for the hills. I do have that, yeah, he's just kind of kicking his hooves right now. He's not doing a whole lot. So here he goes. Here comes the MLG boulder. So right now, I think I was just shooting at the Savage Orcs. Definitely a pretty, juicy target. Harpies in the back are being picked apart. His Giant is now going to be advancing, but I still have my Gore Herds that are pretty healthy. And the Minotaurs are okay against Giants, and just for big targets, I also do have the throwing axes. And Malagor's Traderkin actually does some pretty good damage against such targets. Gore Herds over here fighting Goblins and Nasty Skulkers. Doing pretty well for themselves. 79 kills, definitely quite rock hard. 42 melee attack. They are poisoned right now, but I think their weapon strength is usually in the 30s. The Giant and the Night Goblin Shaman are going to be fighting here. The Minotaurs have pushed in, and Minotaurs, yes, they go down really quick by themselves, but the Butchers of Kalkengard have 60 melee defense regeneration, and if you stack them with Gore Herds, it gives you a very good kit against most builds, because Gore Herds, for example, they shred light targets, Minotaurs shred armor as well as light targets, so it gives you answers against a lot of different things here. So right now we're pushing through pretty effectively. You can see that this Giant is getting a little bit worn down right here, taking some of those throwing axes, and he does have the Night Goblin Warboss fighting with him as well. But the Gore Herds, again, hitting pretty hard against the Giant, even though they're not meant against large targets, but yeah, that itchy nuisance and the terror right there is definitely going to push those guys back. So if we look into the hills, it's still some light skirmishing going on over here. He did win that battle. You can see the Forest Goblin Spider Riders and the Goblins are coming back in here, and the Centaurs, the throwing axes, just getting some decent overwatch here on the Goblin Giant. Imagine a giant Goblin, that'd be pretty terrifying. But the Butchers and Kalkengards just sweeping through my opponent's back line. He doesn't have too much stopping power back here, and they do also have Silver Shield, so against Goblins and Missile Fire, they're pretty durable. So here they come. They're just going to swiggity-swooty all over these Goblins, and oh, those guys look really cool. I was actually looking at the Age of Sigmar stuff, because I was thinking about potentially getting into Age of Sigmar, and they just, I think they just put out the Beasts of Chaos Codex, so and it looks the same. It almost feels like you're just playing Warhammer Fantasy Battles, the same stuff. We'll have to see how they expand them. I think that would be really fun to play the Beastmen in tabletop. Anyways, over here we still have a fight. You can see the Goblin Shaman is going to be supporting the Night Goblin Warboss here, but we're able to use these Centaurs, the throwing axes, to charge in and buckle some of the archers. Centaurs going in as well, so it was a very wide greenskin army, but that's the thing about Beastmen. They're so good at pulling people apart because they have so many mobile threats, and you don't really have to give anyone the infantry fight till you really want to. So the Gore Herds, pretty quick. They're poisoned now, but their speed, I think, is close to 40. A direct hit from that Cygor, just a boulder right to the dome piece of that Giant. And the Spearmen are just kind of chasing him down. I think we have the Destroyers of Drakwold somewhere, but the other Ungor Spears finally being pulled up to that Cygor here. So let's see if he's, let's see his accuracy. Let's see if he's still got that arm, if he's warmed up here. So here comes another boulder. Is it going to hit the Giant? And it's a swing and a miss. How disappointing. I wanted to end the game with a Giant being knocked down by a boulder. But anyways, here, the Night Goblin Shaman, these other troops on the low ground getting taken out. That's going to be army losses for the Greenskins. So yeah, that would, there are matchups in which the Beastmen want to take opponents head on, especially if you're going to be using Morkur. It's definitely very solid in that respect. I could have gone with a style of play where I use not Centaurs, but Bestigors. Again, they would have been pretty good against Savage Orcs, but my army would have been very, very thin, and my opponent could have wrapped me up a little bit better. I definitely think that with the Beastmen in the Greenskin matchup, you don't want to take the head on because even Savage Orcs with a wall can do pretty well against Bestigors. I think you go wide, you pull them apart, you use Harpies to kind of harass things, Centaurs to charge the flanks, use the Poison Hounds. You definitely have a lot of options. So I think that's kind of the better way to play that. And, honestly, in a lot of matchups, I've been using Malagor, and I feel like he's, in many ways as competitive as Morkur in many matchups. Traderkin is actually really good. Devolve is good against factions with low leadership like Skaven, Greenskins, other Beastmen players, of course. And, if you want to go Cygor summoning, you can as well. But this was, I didn't really get a chance to show you guys this game, but I got some really solid Traderkins that did a lot of damage and some Devolves against Savage Orc blobs that were just pretty backbreaking for sure. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this game. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Well played to my opponent Slade X. Definitely would have been a little bit scarier had I had a more narrow elite Beastmen army. I think that the nature of the play with the Centaurs and all that were able to kind of counterbalance the Forest Goblin Spider Riders and the width of the army. There was definitely a lot of targets to isolate. So yeah, well played to my opponent Slade X, and it was a relatively short battle, so I do have another one coming up for you guys, so stay tuned, and we'll be jumping over to the second game here. Alright guys, so now we're back with the second game, which is going to feature a showdown between the Skaven and the Greenskins. So again, we are playing the Mighty Slade X, and this time we're going to be bringing the Skaven. We're going to be trying somewhat of a mad scientist experimental build. I mean, I guess we don't really have like Globadiers or the actual mad scientist units, but like Monk Sensor Bears, one of those units I've really been experimenting with quite a bit lately, and I wanted to see how they do en masse against the Greenskins. So essentially our entire front line is going to be Skaven slaves, and they're just going to be taking the charge, absorbing the Wa, essentially just sacrificing themselves to the Great Horned Rats, which is always a good time for them. And on the flanks, we have Plague Monk Sensor Bears. So these guys are going to be trying to collapse the flanks and then go inward because they have the Contaminate. If you went with Black Orcs, they have really good armor piercing. And I figure against like lower tier Frenzy units, their Discourage is also going to be quite good. The Contaminate is actually what it's called. Each of them is going to be paired up with Doom Wheels. So we do have a Doom Wheel here and one here. And that's pretty much it. It's a very narrow Skaven army. We have some Clan Rats with spears on the flanks. We also have Lord Skrulk, of course, because we're going with a Contaminate build. And for him, he does have the what is that called? The Pestilent Breath. He does have the Blessed with Filth, as well as the Vermintide. And on top of that, we do have two Assassins. So the Assassin's going to be going after Wurzog, Goblin, big bosses, all kinds of stuff like that. So I've never tried this build. This was actually the first time I've ever tried it. I wanted to see how the Sensor Bears do. Typically against Greenskins, there's a multitude of ways you can play. The most probably archetypal way, I would say, is going to be using like Plague Furnaces and just kind of Death Starring and that kind of stuff. But my opponent has a pretty solid build. So Savage Orcs and Goblins in the front line, very similar to the last game. He's got Force Goblin Spider Riders, a massive Goblin firing line in the back, which is going to be super punishing against my Plague Monk Sensor Bears. Like I was not expecting this this much firepower. And on top of that, he does have Orc Boars in the back to help deal with the not chariots, but the Doom Wheels. So he has pretty good answers against my army, but I do think the Sensor Bears are going to put a hurt on a lot of stuff. It's just a matter of their longevity and also my deployment tactics. As you can see, like I'm going to be conceding the center of my formation, and I want to see if I can collapse inwards and maybe sandwich his army and see if that works out. Again, something to experiment with, and we'll see how it goes. So right now, he does have some skirmishers in the back. Force Goblin Spider Riders doing some harassing. Skaven are going to be pushing forward, and the Assassins also going to be waddling forward as well. So you can see these guys just running up, just kind of feeling things out. Of course, I can just pull them back as soon as I see my opponent here. I don't think I have Smoke Bomb on those guys. What abilities did I actually bring? I actually have all the abilities. Anyways, so Skaven slaves in the front line going to be sacrificed to the Horned Rat, and yeah, they're definitely not going to have fun. Those Savage Orcs are just going to massacre them, which is like, this is a Savage Orcs like wet dream right now, just massacring hordes of filthy rats that are just like barely able to fight back, right? But now the Sensor Bears are coming in. So Sensor Bears against Orcs and Goblins, I mean, that's going to be one-sided. Doom Wheels are charging in as well. However, he does have a Tormentor Sword back there, but look at this. Sensor Bears just massacring these Goblins en masse. But look at the damage the Goblins do back, and now the firing line is in effect, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so much firepower. So I summoned some Clan Rats in the back line. The Doom Wheels coming in. I'm like, I need to break this front line as fast as possible. On the other side, it's going okay. Some Sensor Bears did get up and around, so I probably should have used them to collapse. I do send a Doom Wheel in the back line to kind of do some work, but again, I always forget about the Tormentor Sword on the Night Goblins. I assume it got removed with the Dwarves, but they still have it, which is pretty cool. Now, we do break the front line, so part of the strategy is working effectively. The Orc Boars are charging in. They're going to get massacred in sustained combat here. Just torn to shreds by the Doom Wheel and the Sensor Bears and the Spears and all this stuff. That's quite good. He does have some Force Goblin Spider Riders with a rear charge right here, but the Clan Rats with Spears, of course, should be able to defend those guys off, or at least mitigate some of the damage. But the Goblin Archers are the name of the game, so when I tried to get in the back line, these Plague Monks literally did nothing. For 1,000, 1,100 gold, they got shot to pieces and taken out. So I think I needed to be more conservative with them and maybe keep them higher and tighter in the formation, but the whole idea was to test another formation and see if I could sandwich my opponent. Now, it's kind of working on one side. We've overwhelmed this flank heavily, right? Force Goblin Spider Riders crushed. These guys have seeped into the back line, but he has like this massive firing concave, and he's just taking apart the Plague Monk Sensor Bears. Like, this is like against like Black Orcs and more traditional Greenskin builds and maybe like one or two Goblin Archers. They would have just been in great shape here, and a good breath attack as well. So Pestilent Breath roasting a ton of those Force Goblin Spider Riders. I was trying to blob them up here to roast them with that, but we do get into the back line. The Goblins, of course, going to get taken apart by the Sensors, but there's just so much pressure coming in. And even when I kill one group of Goblins with my 1,100 gold, melee unit here, who does have a lot of kills, probably 69, that's what she said. It's just, there's just so much more firepower coming in. And the Doom Wheels getting focus fired, and of course the Tormentor Sword was actually able to kill the other one. So that was a really, really solid play for my opponent. Now Skrulk's kind of in the pits here. He's a little bit trapped. The hordes of bacon have surrounded him, but that's not a bad thing. Skrulk's a good combatant. I come in to try and get the terror out, but just we haven't had enough sandwiching. The sandwich hasn't been, there's no lettuce, there's no meat. We're not able to get in there really. We collapsed one side a little bit. The other side is still holding surprisingly well. The Orc Boys somehow were able to fend off my Sensor Bears with a little bit of support from Goblins. Because a group of Goblins even got my Sensor Bears down to 80%, which is not good for the cost, right? And now we just have massive focus fire coming in. It's pretty much game at this point. I just wanted to show you guys this build because, you know, again, you got to experiment or else you're never going to learn anything new. I wanted to see if we could maybe develop a new sandwich tactic with the Skaven to try and, you know, turn the greenskins into some peanut butter and jelly. But alas, it didn't work very well. Now, maybe I think that's because my opponent had really good width to his army. He also played very well. On top of that, his micro was on point. He had really good collapsing and rear charges. It was just impeccable stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't like the build at all. I felt like it was just not working very well. But again, he plays a fairly unusual greenskin style of play, so perhaps it would have worked a little bit better against traditional greenskins. That's more like orc-centric with black orcs and Warzog and things like that. But yeah, I mean, okay kills. I feel like Stormvermin, like, I usually like to go Stormvermin in this matchup to just weather the wall and a ton of skirmishers and things like that. This certainly isn't like my usual Skaven versus greenskin build, but the double Doom Wheel, I feel like really didn't pay off either. I mean, they did okay, but he had the Tormentor Sword, was able to do really well. He had Boars, he had Force Goblin, he had like all the answers he needed to drag those things down. So it was just really solid play from him. I really liked it quite a bit. And it was a cool build. I like seeing like different greenskin stuff because Warzog and Azag are just so common, but seeing people use the Night Goblin Warboss effectively is really, really fun. So but again, going to keep continuing my crusade with the Plague Monk Sensor Bears, trying to figure it out. I thought the Skaven Slaves would, you know, force my opponent inward and then I could collapse the outsides, but I wasn't able to really collapse the outsides of his formation very well. It just seemed a little bit ineffective, if not in the build, also in my execution probably. So yeah, very well played to my opponent. Again, Slade X, you guys got to see 2 battles versus him there. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this Skaven versus Greenskin game, and we will be seeing you guys next time. Take care.